One day, window shopping in the mall, I came across a window that caught my eye. And there was a somewhat unusual phone being displayed there. It was the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I slowly gazed down expecting an exorbitant price, but to my surprise this iPhone was priced at just $40. However, upon closer inspection, I realized it was actually a fake iPhone. In the end, I didn't pay much attention to it and kept walking like normal. Or at least that's what a responsible person would have done in my place. But as the impulsive buyer that I am, I made my way into that store and bought that fake iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now that I have it in my hands, let's see what I can do and see if we can save face with a phone that pretends to be something that it's not. Starting off with the design, it looks exactly like the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but upon closer inspection, we'll start noticing some off little details here and there, like the camera on the dynamic island, which is in a more centered position. From afar, it could pass as a genuine iPhone, and even up close, it really looks like one. They did a good job emulating the construction of the original iPhone 15 Pro Max, from the square edges to the corners, although they didn't copy the iPhone 15's action button. When I put it next to my sister's iPhone 13 Pro, we can tell by just looking at them that there are minor but noticeable differences. Don't expect to see titanium here since it's entirely made of plastic, but despite that, build quality is better than I thought it was gonna be. I mean, it barely has any hollow areas, which are the norm in other cheap knockoffs. Surprisingly, it still has the lightning port, which we'll be talking about later on. Just by turning it on, you'll notice the screen bezels aren't huge, but they're not as thin as the original. The screen isn't as terrible as expected, and it's bright enough to be a content even under moderate sunlight. I even find it to be better than some cheap Samsung phones like the Galaxy A12. I think these people were like, we don't have any options to choose from, so let's spend all the budget we have on this actually decent display. The dynamic island as we know it is somewhat present here. And I say somewhat because it rarely ever does anything. Charging and switching on and off silent mode are some of the few ways to activate it. Looking really closely, it seems to have a 720p resolution. And since we don't know anything about the resolution and other specs, I installed CPU-Z and found it has a resolution of 1290 by 2696 pixels. Okay, that sounds too high to be true. So I went a little bit further and installed Ada64, which shows a more down-to-earth resolution of 720p by 1600. And the brain power in this device is none other than an Apple 16 with 6 cores and a 28nm process, which is great, isn't it? But wait, something seems off there. Let's double check that. Oh, it's actually a MediaTek A16 Bionic. Wow, I didn't know MediaTek was making processors for Apple now. Wait, that's not the whole story. Of the 6 available cores, only 4 of them are working, and the processor is built on 28nm, indicating that this A16 Bionic's manufacturing date is between 2012 and 2015. The GPU is well known on this channel as it's pretty much the same one we can find on devices like the Galaxy S3 and S3 Mini. Now you might be wondering, is the hardware of a Galaxy S3 enough to run iOS 17? And the truth is it's not. This iPhone is really slow, but we'll be absolutely covering that more in depth a bit later on. Now the interface is very similar to the original, and they copied almost everything. The settings menu is pretty much the same you can find on a real iPhone. The same goes for the notification bar and even the control center. They even copied this accessibility circle, which allows us to use things like Siri, which is there for decoration only. It apparently has 512 GB of storage, but we'll be testing that by installing heavier apps a bit later on. In this section, Apple did an amazing job since they covered the warranty for this device for both hardware and technical support until May 5th, 2087. Here we have almost an exact replica of the desktop of an original iPhone, from the icons of the apps to the menus and widgets. But what happens when we click on the apps? Let's see. The App Store looks the same from the outside, but once inside, what a surprise. They copied even the interface of the original app. We can even install well-known apps like Instagram or WhatsApp, and a few games like Temple Run or Subway Surfers. As you probably noticed, the weather widget doesn't work. I tried every setting available to make it work, but nothing. It really is a pity because the interface takes a hit with this widget not working. But is this also the case of other apps? Testing Apple Maps, I realized no, because it's just Google Maps in disguise. And I prefer it to be this way since at least we have usable maps. With the Photos app, they took the time to create a similar app to that of the original, and they did an okay job. But what about Safari? The app, at least on the surface, has been replicated very well. I dug a little bit deeper and found that it's actually Chrome version 119, which is quite recent. Because of that, browsing the web shouldn't be a problem, except for how extremely slow it is to navigate around with this fake Safari. The ironic thing here is that we can access the Apple website, and in theory we can even buy the real iPhone 15 Pro Max from here. If only I had the money to do such a thing though. The music app is just a simple music player with aesthetics of an iPhone. Nothing interesting, to be honest. Other apps are simple copies of the original ones, like the calculator or the calendar, which are pretty well made. But it's not the case for all, like the Health app, which is just a crappy copy. And then we have apps where they didn't even bother, like the Stocks app, which is just Yahoo Stocks. Then we have the Podcast app, which is just the YouTube app, and the iTunes Store, which is YouTube Music. Interestingly, the phone comes with useless demos of PUBG Mobile and WeChat, which is a Chinese messaging app. It also comes with an app that allows us to install themes, which would be nice if it weren't so damn slow. We also have Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and more trash like that installed. The speaker is not great, but honestly, I expected something way worse, and I thought it was gonna burst my ears, but it didn't. What did destroy my eardrums is this horrible sound that blasts at full volume even when the ringtone volume is low. The people behind this thing really thought some things through, because we can also use the Play Store so we don't have to rely on APKs. Imagine if someday this becomes a reality with the ability to sideload other app stores on a real iPhone. Well, this is how it would look like. But obviously I'm not gonna put my main account on this thing, so I use the old reliable method. I plugged it to my computer using the Lightning port. I clicked I trust this computer, and once in the file explorer, the computer showed me that this iPhone 15 of the 512 gigabytes only had 48 available. I was like, fine, 48 gigabytes is not bad, it's enough for me. I reached for my folder with Android games and started loading some games. After waiting for a while, the computer prompted an error. I tried again, and thinking it was some error due to the screen being off, I kept touching the screen to prevent it from getting locked, but the error went back to haunt me. But something changed this time. The computer now showed me that the iPhone 15 had 78 gigabytes now. That was very weird. So I copied a folder of APKs and I had no issues whatsoever. I also put some game ROMs and there was not any problem either. However, when trying to copy PS1 ISO, once again the iPhone didn't let me copy the file. And that's when I realized that the available space had dropped to 21 gigabytes. Now I understood that it wouldn't let me copy those large files because the iPhone was running out of space. And the thing is, this iPhone didn't really have 512 gigabytes, which was obvious, but what I didn't expect was that its actual capacity was about 4 gigabytes. Not enough to install big games like GTA San Andreas. And if you don't believe me, look at this. Here I have 57 gigabytes free. And by just deleting 200 megabytes of data from the Facebook app, it suddenly has over 83 gigabytes. Anyway, I'll find some way to install big games on this thing, but in the meantime, let's see how the cameras fare. Will they be a disappointment? And spoiler alert, the answer is yes and no. The interface, well, it's identical to that of the iPhone 15. It comes with filters and several modes, which are more for decoration than anything else. But why did I say it was a disappointment? 2 of the cameras are fake, and this is easy to prove by just covering the lenses. But why do I say no at the same time? Because the quality of the main sensor, or the only sensor for that matter, is not as bad as expected. In fact, it takes somewhat acceptable photos. I mean, it's not gonna win any best camera award, but I've seen way worse cameras than this thing. So I guess that's a win for this iPhone. Now let's see what this iPhone is really made of. Starting with the SNES, the performance as expected from the GPU of the Galaxy S2 and S3 family is more than great. It runs King of Dragons without a hitch. But can it run Doom? And yes, it can. Literally 0 issues on this iPhone. Okay, the SNES is a very old console, but what about the Nintendo 64? I played Mario 64 without frame skipping and other hacks, and it runs perfectly. The same goes for Zelda Ocarina of Time. I could play the game here from start to finish just fine. But it's not perfect because it does struggle a little more, and in certain places we can expect some frame drops. For regular Android games, it's fine. If only we could have this level of performance on the interface, then I would be more than happy. And as you can see, I installed Plants vs Zombies from the Play Store, which is 100% playable. But I can't say the same for Subway Surfers, which lags so much it makes me want to kick it in the ass. I know it doesn't have an ass, but you get the point. A game that I played 10 years ago that I suddenly remembered out of nowhere and that I really liked at the time is Dead Effect. For those of you who have played this game, you'll know that this game is a copy of Dead Space. And now that we're talking about clones, I found it appropriate for this video. The game has pretty good graphics for a decade-year-old Android game and runs very well on this phone, even with the graphics settings on max. And finally, we have the most demanding game that this phone's small storage capacity can handle. We have GTA 3 running with every graphics setting on max. Performance is very good, and that's to be expected considering that it has the same GPU as the Galaxy S3. And in theory it could even run GTA San Andreas, but since there's not enough space, this is as far as we can get. If only it had microSD card expansion, it would have much more potential, but unfortunately it's not possible. Okay, with all of this, we've come to the end of the video. And in conclusion, from what I can see, the people behind this replica have spent all the budget they had to create this iPhone on design and screen, neglecting other aspects such as the processor, storage, and RAM. If this weren't the case, it would make a somewhat decent low-end device, and I would even see myself using it if it weren't so damn slow. But hey, for messing around and acting like a clown with it is fine. But beyond that, I don't think it's worth spending $40 on this thing. But out of all the iPhone clones I've seen, this one is honestly one of the best. Anyway, I hope you liked this video and I'll see you guys later. Bye.